Mooring buoys. We have some mooring buoys offshore here. So instead of dropping an anchor on the coral, more onto something that's established there for that purpose. When you're traveling, it's probably not as big a problem here, but when you're traveling other places in the world where there might be coral, be careful of the souvenirs that you're buying. So a lot of that is collected directly off the coral. So that's not a big issue here, though, right?
No, the issue here is that there's the Coral Reef Protection Act was passed in 2008 or 2009, the Florida Coral Reef Protection Act, and there are a set of punishments for boaters that get caught dropping their anchor and destroying even a small half-meter patch of reef. You can get fined, and they can, if they catch you and prove that you did it, then they can confiscate your boat, all the equipment on the boat, and you can get a seriously hefty fine for damaging coral.
How long do they actually catch people? Right.
The enforcement of it is another matter entirely, but it's there, and it was passed.
They punish it back enough to make you think to doing it, because if you get caught.
Yeah, the folks that usually get caught are the large vessels waiting for berthing offshore here that drop their anchor in an unauthorized location. And then the boat that I used to work on, if we see that, we'll report it. And then the Coast Guard will go out there and actually force them to move, and then they'll investigate to see if there was damage, and then it get taken to court by the state.
So, you know, ways we're thinking of students getting involved. I mean, educate their parents, clearly if their parents have boats, but also find ways to reach out to other boaters and divers. Maybe put together a little video, you know, please protect our reefs by, you know, changing your behavior when you're around the coral. Putting together maybe a flyer that they could hand out, you know, at some, what's the word for docks? You know, go out to marinas. That's the word I was looking for. You know, or some dive shops or something. Because if it comes from kids, kids are cute. People like kids. So send them out to try to guilt people into better behavior. Anything else?
Why don't we put more mooring balls out on the first, second, and third reef, or at least the second and third reefs? Why?
That's a very good, great question. We have, right now we have 122 throughout the county. And one of the things, we have additional anchors out there. But and what we do is we'll move the buoys from anchor to anchor periodically so that one location doesn't get impacted more than another. That's one thing. The other thing is, in the deeper reefs, the outer reefs, we don't have any mooring buoys out there because it's the shipping lane, and they would just get they would get destroyed, and it would be a tremendous expense to try to maintain them at that depth. It costs the 122. It costs the Broward County about $60,000 a year to maintain them. So it's not cheap, and if you put out deeper water, it's going to cost even more to maintain.
Can't you just
Good idea.
Can't you include that price and offset it by, because you have to register a boat?
Very good. Boat registration fees go towards protection of manatees only here in Broward County.
Well, I thought the reef brought in 50,000.
I know, that's excellent idea. Go to our county commission meetings. Yeah. And suggest to our county administrators that needs to change.
All right. Marine debris, we already talked a lot about that. One thing I wanted to mention is, how many of you have beauty products with little microbeads in it? Toothpaste or face scrubs or anything? That's plastic. That's going down your drain. And I used to use that stuff. I didn't ever think about it. I don't know what I thought it was, but that's a big problem, and it's little tiny pieces. So, you know, obviously recycling, reusing grocery bags, don't use your microbeads. So things we've already talked about for that, do beach cleanups, nice competitions between classes. You can take a couple different groups out and compete about how much they're picking up. You can have recycling drives or something at your school. You can have competitions about, you know, remembering your reusable bags when you go to the grocery store, and make like the checkers of the grocery store sign a paper or something that your students compete against. And
One of the things that I think about with our campus is not even a beach cleanup, but just a campus cleanup.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that we did with our students when I was talking to my second graders about wind and wind energy,
Right.
we talked about how can we tell, because of where we're located, how can you tell which way the wind was blowing that day, since it doesn't always blow in the same direction. And what the kids started realizing is when they come to school in the morning, they look to see what side of the fence the trash is on. Because when the wind is blowing from the west towards the east, all our trash is on the inside of our playground. But when it's blowing from the east towards the west, all our trash is on the parking lot side of our fence. And so they'll tell us, Ms. Roski, the wind was coming from that way because look at all the trash. And that's how they, and then they go and just scoop it all up and pick it up.
Kids are scientists. They notice everything. That's
Yeah.
great.
Very good.
But that's a good point too. Like, it doesn't have to be on the beach in order to get to the ocean. I mean,
Well,
it
even
just-
the competition, can we lower the amount of trash that's in our neighborhood? Like, I'm not a neighborhood school, but
Right.
within the neighborhood, if the kids who are going to that neighborhood school are passing that message along through their neighborhood, will it lower the amount of trash they see collected against their fence?
That's great.
Will they start to see fewer bags or fewer pieces of debris and things like that? If there's an increase in information.
Right, and that's another thing is recycling is great, and if you have something that's recyclable, you should definitely recycle it. But the best thing to do would just not be to produce the trash at all. So even with your students, try to get them to bring reusable water bottles to class instead of drinking water out of a plastic bottle. I don't know what your rules are about having drinks, or buy a lunch bag that's renewable. So the major thing driving these is carbon dioxide, right? The release of fossil fuels. And sea level rise, it's related to that, average temperatures are rising. With warmer seawater temperatures, you have thermal expansion. And also as you're melting ice that's on land and it's flowing into the water, it's adding water to the oceans and adding capacity there. Ocean acidification, more carbon absorbed out of the atmosphere by the oceans, more carbonic acid produced, lowering the pH of the oceans. And then of course climate change, because carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. Greenhouse gases trap heat. The more greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, the more heat trapped. Pretty simple. So land use change and fossil fuel use are two of the major things that are putting carbon dioxide into our atmosphere. So burning fossil fuels and land use change. So you cut down trees, the carbon that was held by those trees in the atmosphere, now there's no trees to take the carbon out. So land use change is a big factor. This impacts coastal resiliency. We have, down here, we have something called the Southeast Florida Regional Climate Compact, that all the southeastern counties, Broward, Palm Beach, Miami-Dade, Martin County are all involved in this compact. It's been recognized by the White House. It's a big deal. We're doing actually pretty good stuff down here to deal with this, because sea level rise is going to impact South Florida more than almost anywhere else in the country. And the leaders of states and the nation aren't necessarily doing what we need them to do to protect our coastline. So we're doing it more locally. So that's something that you can look into with your students maybe, and look into things like that. Coastal resiliency, so mangroves, seagrasses, coral reefs, all this protection. So what can we do? This is a big issue that needs to be dealt with on a lot of different levels, from international organizations to national governments and right on down, but things that we can do in our classrooms. Again, competitions like maybe you can compete between classrooms on who can reduce their energy the most. I don't know if you can have your students bring in electric bills and have competitions about who can lower their electric bill month to month by a certain percent or something.
Broward County had a competition, I can't remember the name of it.
The
for-
P3.
The P3, right.
And it's actually the Miami Heat sponsors a competition
Oh, right.
where you try to reduce the amount of energy used by your school,
Okay.
and then the Miami Heat award the school and one in each county for lowering the amount of energy they use. And then you use it towards your P3 environmental challenge.
Nice.
Yeah.
Bike to school days, maybe have a day, get, the police involved or something, so there can be some more escorts and security, because obviously a big issue with biking is safety. But have, bike walk to school days, things like that. And maybe even have your students write letters. Like I said, people like kids. Kids are cute. People want to listen to what kids have to say. So if you have your kids write letters to your mayor, write letters to the governor,
Our governor.
write letters to your representatives. Anyone who might listen and say, this is our world, this is our future, and protect it for us.
Our
That would be something.
Let me interject that. I said our governor because the state of Florida, the government agencies in the state of Florida are not allowed to use the term climate change by edict from the governor's office. So get your students to write letters
Does that include teachers?
to open their eyes. What?
I would suspect not, and
I
it's,
don't think they like that.
it's not.
We are federal employees.
Yeah.
School, our district, every teacher is considered a federal and state employee.
I don't think it's an official policy. I think it's just
It's not-
particularly
It's not
frowned
in
upon.
paper anywhere, but
Right.
one of the agencies that we have deal with, Southeast Florida Coral Reef Initiative, they've been told not to use it. So, write letters.
And yeah, so that's just a small sample of things that we can do, because it's not, we have some power, we can make changes and we can do a lot of good. And I think that for me, that's one thing that we need to teach our students about the corals and how beautiful they are. We need to get them to understand the threats to them, and we also need to get them to see that all is not lost. There's something to be done, because the worst thing is to lose hope.